Alright, so what's going on, guys? It's your boy Nistro here, and we are back with new support out of Maze of the Master for Odion. New cards for the Apophis, Temple of the King, Odion deck. I don't know what it's going to be called by the community. There's either 9 or 10 new cards for this stuff, and only about like half of them are actually like playable. There is one that I feel like it's a little more gimmicky, and I'm not going to include into the combo line, Treasures, which sets up your trap monsters, and then it also adds you one of the monsters from the engine. And then you have Man with the Mark, who also either gets you to the original Temple of the Kings, which is essential for some of the combo lines, or it could add one of the spells and traps in the engine. Last Judge gets you to Man with the Mark, and can also recycle some of your engine pieces to summon itself from graveyard. The only issue is that sometimes you're going to want to banish him, and he doesn't have any way to really come back from the banish zone. He only comes back from hand or graveyard, or from the graveyard I should say. And then he doesn't do anything once he comes back on field. He's just a big body. So this Anubis guy, he's not great, but he's an essential engine piece. Same thing with Serket here, right? With the original Temple of the Kings, right, you had the Serket that you could send to summon any monster pretty much from your deck or extra deck, but this one does not count as the same name as the original one, so you can't use it for that way. Its summoning conditions are really weird because you have to banish a level 10 or higher monster from your deck while you control Temple of the Kings, and even though the field spell counts as it, it's like they gave you a level 10 monster in engine. But this is really because there's a funny way to set up a Winged Dragon of Ra that I'll talk about later, because it's really gimmicky, but it's kind of funny, I guess. And then he also adds a spell and trap from the engine, the same way that Man with the Mark does. So he has a little bit of utility, and he can also clear the field when he attacks. He destroys monsters when he attacks, and he gains attack equal to half the destroyed monster, so he can help you clear the field. Now, in terms of new trap cards, you get one new trap monster, which is a new Apophis monster. It's a level 4, and it sets another Apophis from deck, and you can activate that set Apophis this turn. And it also searches for the OG embodiment. And then you have Swamp Deity, and this one's my favorite one because it negates the effects of face-up cards and it doesn't target. So it's like you could set this one and then set this one, and then it's like you can negate two faces. It's almost like a Fiendsmith Desiree, right? Kind of like for free. And then you have a counter trap card here, which I feel like you should only play one of it because you can recycle it through the Last Judge, and it's a kind of crazy effect, right? So, but you need to have 3 other spell and trap cards on your field. So it's a spell and trap negate, and it only negates spell and trap cards, so it doesn't negate effects. Like if they use something like True Light, you're not going to be able to interact with it. But if they activate a spell or trap card and you control Temple of the Kings, you negate the activation, and then you can destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible, and then inflict damage to it basically like Gekis their field, and then they take half the total attack of all those monsters, which is crazy. But it's pretty good, and it's searchable through the combo line, so you're gonna have access to this fairly easily. And we'll get into the rest of the deck list later, but I just want to give you guys like a bread and butter combo that I figured out in like 2 seconds. Starting off, I have 2 combos to show you. This is my second time recording because I actually ended up figuring out that the first line I did was illegal because this card is a little more ass than I thought it was, but it's fine. Basically, for both combos for this deck, you need to pretty much open Treasures of the King. I don't believe this deck has a 1-card combo unless you're playing a full Fiendsmith Unchained line, which nobody's going to do that for a deck like this because there's really no sauce to that. Because then you wouldn't have space for the non-engine, and that's just not a realistic way to go about it. Treasures. When this card's activated, you set an Apophis trap from your deck, right? So this is one of the only 2 cards that can play through Droll in this deck, and it doesn't play through it completely, but it helps that it does set, right? I wished more cards set, but you know, I guess we gotta take what we can get, right? It's gonna set the Serpent from deck, right? And that's great because Serpent's gonna get us more plays later on. Now, since we control Temple of the Kings, we can now summon out our Scorpion. by banishing our Anubis, right? And this is our level 10 that we're using in the engine. We're not using any Winged Dragon or Raw bullshit. This is our level 10. Scorpion has the ability to either add Temple of the Kings or a spell that mentions it. In this case, we're going to add the OG Temple of the Kings from deck to hand. And mind you, this is without using our normal summon. So we're in a pretty good spot so far because we're about to be able to activate this Apophis. But before we do that, we're going to set it instead so that we can fulfill the searching condition for treasures. Basically, because we have 2 or more set cards on our field, we get to add a monster that mentions Temple of the Kings from deck to hand. So we're going to add another Anubis here. Just because we banish it doesn't mean we use this effect, right? It can't do anything in the banish zone. Like, once we banish Anubis, it's pretty much going to stay there. So instead, we're going to add one of the Anubis from deck to hand. And Anubis can discard itself to add Man with a Mark. Now we're going to activate our Temple of the Kings, because even though it was set this turn, it can still be activated. And we're able to activate our Serpent because we control Temple of the Kings. Serpent, and this is all one effect, right? So Serpent gets to summon itself and then set another Apophis trap from deck, and that other Apophis trap can be activated in the same turn. So basically you're able to get to Swamp Deity really easily. So if this was the opponent's turn, this would be able to be activated and used as an interruption. But even on our turn, we can still use it to summon and then tribute both to make our Divine Serpent Apophis. And this is probably the best monster in the engine. So it can be either fusion summoned using 2 monsters that mention Temple of the Kings, or it can be contact fused by tributing 2 Apophis monsters. Since, you know, both of these are Apophis, they can be tributed. It has 2 soft once per turn effects, right? So it has one effect where you can set up to 3 Apophis traps with different names from your graveyard, meaning that the 2 monsters or the 2 trap monsters that you use to summon this, you can just reset them, which is great. And then it has a trigger effect where once per turn, if a trap card is activated, you can pop a card your opponent controls, which is great. So it's engine, it gets you good follow-up, it gets you more interruptions, and it can be an interruption itself, right? So that's pretty cool, pretty solid card all around. Now, before we resolve our fusion, a Serpent is going to activate in graveyard. Since it was sent to the graveyard, it gets to add the embodiment of Apophis from deck to hand. Now we can resolve our fusion Apophis to reset both of our Apophis continuous traps. And then we're going to normal summon Man with a Mark here to grab our counter trap card, which is great, right? Because now we have a better installation into board breakers or into cards that may not be able to respond to easily. Now we have a counter trap on top of having like negates and pops. Now we're going to link 2 into Silhouette Rabbit, right? And this is going to be 2 more free interruptions for the deck, because normally when you go for Silhouette Rabbit, you may need to resolve Azarune a little earlier or a little before you're able to pop a spell or trap card, because you want the negate for summoning from extra deck. But in this deck, since everything is a trap card that can summon itself, you'll be able to time this interruption a lot better than before. So that's why this card can go really, really well into this engine. This is pretty much going to be our end board. So going into the opponent's turn, it doesn't even have to be during the main phase, which the other Apophis trap cards have to be during main phase, but Serpent can be used at any time. So just like on our turn, during the opponent's turn, it can be activated to set an Apophis trap. And the cool thing about Swamp Deity is that these are not once per turn. So you can summon Serpent, and you can either trigger either your fusion or your Silhouette, and then you get extra interruption here. So yeah, once you have one continuous trap set up, Apophis also, it can be an interruption, and because it's all one effect, it's basically like a Desiree, except it doesn't target. It's a very good card to be able to like outmaneuver what your opponent may be doing, and because it doesn't target, it can make it a very effective at stopping what your opponent does. And because this is all one effect and the monster is a normal monster, this isn't a monster effect that's happening, so this can even go through stuff like Chaos Angel. Because this targets any face-up cards, this could also stop board breakers like Heavy Storm, whatever the case may be. With a 2200 defense, that can be pretty significant. You don't even really care if they start to swing at you, but you're going to summon all these guys in defense anyway. In a normal game, you would have all these guys in defense. I think even your fusion, you could leave it in defense. I think 26 is enough to where even like a random Bastille that they may have isn't going to do anything to it. But our entire engine's Earth, so it's not like they can Bastille us anyway. Just as a, like, just in case that's the only thing they can push with, you're not too worried about that. So yeah, and it negates cards up to the number of other continuous trap cards that you control, right? And so as you can see, The first one would only negate 1, but the second one would be able to negate 2, and because it's not once per turn, and also not once per chain, so, you know, you can use these whenever you need to, however you need to on the opponent's turn, and it could be really good at stopping them from doing certain things, you know, negating multiple things at the same time, whatever it is you need to do. It's a really good card. And then you also have Azarun, right, to be able to summon itself. And then I would say, like, you can actually chain Azarun to, like, you can chain the other continuous traps to the Swamp Deity. So, like, let's say they have one card that you're trying to negate right now, but then they also have, like, a field spell or something. You can do Chainlink 1 Swamp Deity, Chainlink 2 Azarun, and then now you're going to be able to negate 2 effects because Azarun would summon first and then Swamp Deity second. You still have your Apophis pop, you have your Rabbit pop in case they have stuff on field that you don't care about negating, but you just want to like get rid of as well. And then you have the Verdict of Anubis, which negates a spell or trap card and then Raigekis their field. And because all the other, because all the trap monsters still count as trap cards, so that means like if they were to Harpy's Feather Duster you, all these monsters would be destroyed, but because you have double Swamp Deity and you have a counter trap, I don't think that's going to be the case. It may be the case that you may want to save these for when they're using some kind of monster effect, since you have a spell or trap negate anyway, and this may be able to Raigeki your opponent's field if they don't have anything for this, which they probably won't. It's a speed spell 3 on turn 2. They probably won't have anything for this. This is what like Red Reboot was for, right? Also Azarun, right? You're probably going to tribute it. So coming into turn 3, we're going to link 2 for Azza, since all the Apophis fusion trap cards are Earth and they're also normal monsters. We can make Azza, and then we can use Silhouette Rabbit to link off as well. Silhouette Rabbit, its only restriction is that it can't be used as link material the turn that you activate its effect, but once you do that. And also it can't be destroyed by battle, so it's most likely not leaving the field unless they have some kind of board wipe, like I don't know, like Mirror Jade or something. So you can also link it off to go into something like Cross Sheep. I did the sequencing wrong. I was supposed to summon Cross Sheep first and then go into Azza so that I could get the Cross Sheep effect here, but it's alright. Now Anubis in graveyard, it can actually shuffle back 3 of our trap cards or Temple of Kings, right? So it's like any 3 trap cards plus Temple of Kings. And this is actually really good because even though we do have the Divine Serpent here, this lets us cycle back our Verdict, cycle back Azarun, so you can play multiple Silhouette if you wanted to. Lets us cycle back our Swamp Deities or our Serpent. So just put any 3 back. And then link off into something else, right? Again, I sequenced it wrong. You should have summoned Cross Sheep first, but then Cross Sheep is allowed to bring us back the Man with a Mark, and Man with a Mark is going to get us more follow-up, so in case, if they can't beat us that first turn, they're definitely, if they don't break our board this first turn, it's going to be really hard for them to catch up. Because look at how much more we can still do, right? We can still use Treasures here. Even though we don't have 2 sets, we have trap cards in our graveyard, so Treasures is able to grab us another copy of Scorpion. And then we can use Apophis to reset both our traps, and then because of Temple of Kings, we can reactivate Serpent, and then we can reset the Apophis that we just shuffled back, and we're still able to activate it because Serpent allows us to activate it that same turn. Now our Scorpion, we can banish our final copy of Anubis the Last Judge. It should also be stated that Anubis's summoning condition, because it's not an activated effect, is not once per turn. So if you can cycle 3 more trap cards into graveyard that you don't care about, like Evenly Matched, Imperm, whatever, then you'll be able to get more out of Anubis because you could cycle those back as well. The only thing you really can't cycle back in this deck is the monsters, and that's like the toughest part. Anubis will be the only thing cycling in and out, assuming you have a grind game that goes on for that long, because look at how explosive this is, and we're not even like done yet. So yeah, so Serket here gets to grab another copy of Field Spell, and this is great because Field Spell is also a soft once per turn, right? So when this card's activated, you set 1, and then once per turn, if you have 2 more set cards or a trap card in your graveyard, add a Temple of Kings, and then it says you can only activate 1 per turn, meaning since we activated the Field Spell last turn, we were able to search off of that last Field Spell and then still get to this one, set another Apophis trap, right? One of the Serpent set. I believe we didn't have access to this Serpent yet. This is a new Serpent. We didn't cycle back the first one. So this is another copy of Serpent, and then we also will be able to add another monster that mentions Temple of Kings from deck to hand. So we can go into something like Time Thief Redoer, because Serpent's level 4, Mark is level 4, and Redoer is really good with using trap monsters. and we can also link off into something like Avermax. And the reason why I'm going for Avermax here is because even though Access Code would be a better boss, I wanted just to have something in the extra deck that wouldn't conflict with Dominus Purge. And I think this is the best link for that doesn't conflict with Dominus Purge. Feel free to let me know in the comment section if you think there's anything better. You can also still resolve the Swamp Deity because, you know, it was set that turn, and there is actually another fusion monster which we're going to show in the next replay. So this time we're going to do treasures plus man with a mark, right? So you would think that this would be the better start because man seems to be the starter for the deck, but this is actually worse. This is actually a slightly weaker end board, but with better follow-up, and I will elaborate really quickly, or I'll elaborate as we go along, right? So again, we start off with Temple, same thing, right? Do the set 2, accidentally misclicked there. I do a few misclicks in this one, but it's fine, right? So we're able to get our search for Scorpion, right? Then we do our Apophis play, and doing it this way allows you to get to the fusion under Nibiru. So since this would be summon number 4, so if we were to get nibbed on Scorpion, we still have our 2 Apophis monsters set up, or 3 Apophis monsters set up actually, because this time we're grabbing the embodiment as well, and we're actually going to use him this time. Last time we didn't use him. So now we're going to go Serket, banishing our last judge, and then we're going to go grab another treasures. Again, link 2 into Silhouette, and then set the embodiment, right? Now, the difference between last replay and this replay is that we do not have the counter trap, right? So what's going to happen here is that we had to search another copy of treasures off of Serket, which is great because now that means that we have guaranteed follow-up for the following turn, right? Just like last replay, you can resolve treasures to get you a monster that mentions Temple of the Kings, and then immediately activate the second field spell right after to keep going. So you can pretty much get access to your entire engine next turn, even if your board gets broken, assuming this stays on field, obviously. Now, opponent's turn, right? You can do standby phase Serpent to go set the Swamp Deity, and then once it goes main phase, your Swamp Deities are live and your regular Apophis is live. Just like I mentioned before, because you want to have as many trap monsters as possible, you may want to prioritize using your regular embodiment of Apophis before resolving Swamp Deity. And so this way you get the most number of negates out of Swamp Deity, assuming that you have the space to, you know, have all these on your field, right? And if you get to use Azarun, then you can resolve the second Swamp Deity, right? And I even make a point here, right? So try to save Swamp for last so that it can negate the most amount of cards. So now, going into turn 3, you can use treasures, frame 1 to search the last judge. You can use last judge to search man with a mark. And then you can go into your link plays. This time we're going to start with the Cross Sheep, right? And now Cross Sheep gets to go revive man with the mark from the graveyard. Now this may seem a little redundant, right? Like, why did we search man with the mark if we're just going to special summon back from the graveyard? Well, that's because we're not going to use our normal summon here. So in case we, you know, need an extra body with our normal summon, we have this in hand, but most likely we're not going to need it. Man with the mark has to search as Verdict, just like last time. It could search as better engine cards, but this is more of like, okay, if we don't OTK this turn, then we have the follow-up to just stop our opponent from just negate a spell trap card and then clear their front row. And then we can use a last judge here again to shuffle back 3 of our Apophis cards that we don't need. You would think like, oh, like maybe you should reset them with the Divine Serpent first, and I think that wouldn't hurt either. My only caveat with that is I'm going to be able to reset another copy of Serpent using Field Spell anyway. I'm going to be able to activate another copy of Swap Deity because of Serpent anyway. And I'm going to be able to search the copy of Embodiment once I send this to the graveyard. So I don't need to set them off of Divine Serpent. And I think it's actually less effective if I set them off of Divine Serpent. I think it's better actually if I do it this way, because then I get more bodies. Instead of just setting the 3, I actually get to use them more, right? And that also gives me access to both Swamp Deities. Apophis is also a soft once per turn, so you can make a second one and then reset Serpent plus Swamp Deity here. So it's actually really cool. So we're gonna resolve the second, or we're gonna activate second field spell, right? Set Serpent, add a Scorpion. We're gonna link into Selene, since the Apophis is a normal monster. We're gonna link into Link Spider. Because Serpent was sent to Graveyard, we get our embodiment. We're gonna summon our Serket, banishing our last judge. And then we're gonna add Defense of the Temple, right? So Defense of the Temple here, fusion summons a Earth Fusion monster from extra deck using monsters from hand or field. If you use a monster that mentions Temple of the King, you could also use face-up monsters your opponent controls as material. It's kind of cool because you don't have to control Temple of the Kings to use this effect. So if you just are able to get access to Serket, but I don't know, in case this somehow stays on field, or if you have a way to bring this back from Graveyard, if you're using like Vernisylphs or something, then you can go for Defense of the Temple and use monsters your opponent controls. You can activate this and go for the Divine Scorpion Beast, right? So this has to use a Serket monster. If this didn't require a Serket monster, if this required like a monster that mentioned Temple of the Kings, you would have been able to use Man with a Mark plus an opponent's monster to make this, which would have been even better, but is what it is. But it takes any other monster with 2500 or less attack, so again, you can super poly at least one monster on the opponent's field using Defense of the Temple. And then Scorpion Beast on summon gets to banish a monster your opponent controls or in the graveyard, and it gains attack equal to half. So if they have a monster with 2000 or more, he's going to gain at least 1000 attack. And then if you have a level 10 monster that's banished, he can actually just make 2 attacks during battle phase. And that's not even just on monsters, just two attacks in general. So he can go up to 4k and swing twice, creating a pretty convenient OTK, especially if your opponent only had one monster on field with over 2000 attack. You could, or 2 monsters on field, because you could use one diffusion and then you can banish another, and then all of a sudden now their fucking board is clear and you have double swing for game. It's pretty funny. You only have to play 1 temple because it's more than searchable with the engine, but because it's like 2 card combos only, it's a question of can you even get there. Like there does seem to be a lot of payoff of this deck. The question is, can you get there? That's going to be the thing about this archetype, right? So I made a point, right? You can use the monsters the opponent controls. If not, you can use Mark, and then you can use Selene to bring back the Mark, and then you can use Selene and Link Spider to go for Avermax, and now you can go for Serpent. Set the Swamp Deity, and you can overlay Serpent and Mark. Going for Redoer. And then you go battle phase, you know, you have more than enough swings. Like if they have something that's still on field, Avermax can deal with it. And then, you know, Apophis, Serket, Judge, Redoer. If they have Chaos Angel on field, Swamp Deity can deal with Chaos Angel. It's just a really solid OTK engine, assuming that everything resolves. I'll have to test playing this stuff through hand traps later on, because it does seem to have some kind of potential. I'm not too sure yet. And also, yeah, if you, even on your turn, you don't forget about this Divine Serpent pop to clear cards on field, and you could also use Redoer to banish face-up cards, or it doesn't banish, it places them on top of the opponent's deck, which is crazy, because then he could swallow them, or he could force your opponent to draw them for turn. Coming back to the deck profile, I don't think this deck is bad. I think there's definitely some sauce to it. I just don't like the weakness to Droll. I feel like there's too much searching and not enough setting from deck. Like it's really only treasures and the Apophis fusion that's set, and treasure sets from deck, which is great, right? Like you want to see treasures, like we value treasures, but the fact that like Man with a Mark, your whole combo ends if you get impermed. If you get drolled, is very much the case that you may have to just pass turn. I'm not the biggest fan of that. The fusion spell here, it's something of a super poly for the other fusion. So as you guys may have seen, there's a second fusion. The issue is that you have to use a Serket monster. This card's really good at establishing OTKs, since you have to use Serket, right? Like you can't use Man with a Mark to make this fusion. It makes it so like you can't get the removal effect of Serket. So the fusion spell, it can banish itself from graveyard if you control Temple of the Kings to add Dangers of the Divine. And so Dangers of the Divine can summon Winged Dragon of Ra from your banish zone, ignoring summon conditions, and make its attack and defense 4000. Oh, also it can attack, so there really is no point to playing this. Okay, but yeah, that's kind of the gimmick. They want Winged Dragon of Ra to be the level 10 monster that you banish, but I don't think that that's a good thing. or I don't think that's a good play. I guess for the rest of the engine, we're only on 2 Temple because I feel like it's searchable, and I don't believe there are any 1-card combos in this deck, but I feel like since we can grab it off of pretty much like multiple cards, there's no need to like double up on or triple up on it. As you can see, we have a lot of space for non-engine. So, you know, Called by Prost by Field Prost is going to be really big. Impulse and Purge, right? So we can just, since everything's Earth, we can play with Purge pretty well. Clueless, Nib, and Ghost Ogre, these are 3 cards that don't conflict with the Purge. And then for just like other cards I thought would be cool, Mistling Seedlings can search Earth Fairies using its effect. And since the entire engine is Earth, you don't lose out on the restriction of being locked into Earth effects for the rest of the turn. So you could search the OG Mystical Beast of Serket and then, you know, normal summon it. And then if you have regular Temple of the Kings, you can actually send Temple of the Kings and Serket to summon something like Naturia Exterio, right? Because it this only summons fusions. So it's either Exterio or Red Ice Dark Dragoon or Last Warrior from Another Planet, but just pick the most stupid fusion that you can find. For me, I think Exterio is one of the most stupid fusions like in the game. And since it's not being fusion summoned, you don't have to worry about the summoning condition. Another card I was thinking at or looking at was Time Thief Power Reserve, because it's basically like a summon 1, summon 2. It summons out a Time Thief from anywhere pretty much, and you could use that to make a redoer really easily. And then, you know, because you're using the Time Thief engine, it could like bring itself back next turn when you bring back the redoer after using redoer's effect. And yeah, Double Barrel is here because it has a trigger effect where if it has a trap card as material, and it takes 2 level 4s, but it has a trigger effect where if it has a trap card as material, it can negate the effect of a face-up monster on the field if your opponent activates a card or effect. So the way that would work is that they would activate the effect, and then on this isn't a quick effect, so you're not chaining to it, but on resolution, you'd be able to negate a face-up card. It's a really beautiful artwork. It's basically like the fucking Doctor Who 10th and 12th Doctors working together, but the card just sucks ass, right? Like Redoer is just a lot better than this, but if you want like extra cards that take advantage of you using trap monsters as material, Double Barrel is your guy. Dangers of the Divine, there's no reason to play this in the engine. I thought I was gonna click something, but it actually doesn't work. Dark Beckoning Beast and Spirit Gate is here, mostly because I like Spirit Gates, because if you can get to Last Judge, which you can pretty easily, then you can use Spirit Gates to recycle Temple of the Kings in case you send Temple of the Kings to the graveyard. And also you can use Dark Beckoning Beast to either make Silhouette Rabbit, this can make like Unchained, this can make Fiendsmith. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Dark Beckoning Beast, and it just gets you access to opening in the process. So that's pretty cool. And since, yeah, Anubis is a fiend type, you can go through Aerial Leader, and then because you'll have the extension with opening, you can go from Aerial Leader into the Unchained, add back Anubis, discard, and then Anubis get you into all the engine. And then from engine you can summon out Anubis, and then you can use Anubis to you can't shuffle back the monsters to summon out Anubis, you have to shuffle back the trap cards or the Temple of the King. So that means you can't even recycle the field spell. Feels kind of bad, man. If you really wanted to, Dark Beckoning Beast could get you to Uriah using just 1 card. So Dark Beckoning Beast can search either the Phantasmal Summoning Beast or Dark Summoning Beast, and then you basically link off into Salamangreat Amarage. And so going into Amarage, you can discard whichever 0 attack fiend that you searched, and then you can use Spirit Gates to bring back that same monster, since Spirit Gate doesn't target the fiend in your graveyard when it's summoning. So you can either go Dark Summoning Beast, Tribute, summon Uriah straight from deck, but then you can't attack for the rest of the turn, or you can go Phantasmal, Tribute, add Uriah from deck to hand, and then special summon it, ignoring summon conditions. But this plays into Droll a little harder, so it's really personal preference. This stops you from attacking altogether. This one only stops Uriah from attacking directly, so I think this one's a little better, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, that's why I think these could be good supplementary engine cards, and since the deck only has 3 normal summons anyway, 3 more normal summons wouldn't hurt. Like, it wouldn't really kill the deck. Like, you'd have less space for non-engine, but you can like cut down on the circuits, you can cut down on the fusion spell, or you can probably just take out the fusion spell altogether. You can cut down on some of the non-end to be able to fit this in. Maybe even Fiendsmith as well, maybe. Psalm of Kings seems pretty good in this engine, right? So it's a trap card that searches the other Dominuses. So I think if you're gonna play this card, or if you have plans to play this card, which I personally do, I think this is one of the coolest cards I've ever seen. It's good that going first, you can also like just search Dominus Impulse as a interruption for your opponent going second. Whereas going second, you can use this to search Purge, since Purge does not conflict with the engine. Oh yeah, if you're gonna play Beckoning Beast, you're gonna have to take out Purge. That's personal preference, right? You can just put in Ash Blossoms instead of Purges. That's not a big deal. But yeah, I think like these are definitely gonna be a staple in the deck once these come out in Alliance Insight. Thrust is cool because Thrust allows you to, it's just a good going first card in this deck because you get to set, you know, cards like Purge or whatever. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with Temple of the Kings because Temple of the Kings, although it should be able to activate a trap card the turn that you set it, Thrust specifically says you can't activate the set card that turn, so I don't believe it works. And then just some more non-engine that you can play. Droplet for going second, Droll because it doesn't conflict with Purge, and it's because it's really strong. Maybe even like as like a cross-out target so that, you know, you don't get Drolled yourself. And then Evenly Matched because it's a trap card, right? So if you start with it, and then you activate Treasures of the King, you won't need to have a second card to set. You can just get the search effect off of treasures, which is awesome. So you can like, so in that way that would make Evenly plus treasures a good 2-card combo, because then it's like you can just add the either the Anubis gets to recycle any trap cards, so it can recycle the Evenly Matched and your Dominuses and your Psalm of King. So if you activate these like hand traps going second, like on your opponent's first turn, and then you get access to Anubis, discard himself to search Man with a Mark, then Anubis, you know, might be able to summon himself if you have enough of these, you know, trap cards in a graveyard. And so that kind of rewards you for playing like more copies of Evenly, because it's like at that point there's really no risk. Like even if Evenly gets negated, you can still take advantage of the fact it's in your graveyard with treasures and Anubis. So that's kind of cool. And then extra deck, right? Apophis, Silohat. You could play more than one. I just wanted to show like a full range of different extra deck monsters you can play. Like I feel like the only thing that's a staple is to play more than one Apophis, because its pop effect is not a hard once per turn, or neither of its effects are a hard once per turn. So if you wanted to take advantage of either of its effects like more than once, you definitely could, which I think is amazing. And then you can, you know, Serket, right, for going for game, Silohat for setting up more traps, Cross Sheep because if you summon the fusion monster into one of its arrows, or if you summon it in a way where the fusion monster is already pointing to it, but then you special summon one of the trap cards in its arrows, it can bring back Man with a Mark on the opponent's turn, and that can grab you more resources on the opponent's turn. So that's pretty cool. IP SP, assuming you don't resolve Purge from hand, Laguska and Time Thief because the Apophyses are level 4s, Azarun's level 4, Man with a Mark is level 4, Typhon, in case you don't use Purge, but you know, you just want to get rid of some 3,000 plus bodies. Link Spider, since the Apophyses are all normal monsters, in case you want to use them for a Link summon. Ozza, because you can turn 2 Apophyses into maybe like a Selene. And Selene, because Man with the Mark is a spellcaster, so you have the chance to summon it back from graveyard. And you could go Axis Code Talker with Selene. Definitely, you don't have to play, you're not locked out of playing it. I would just say if you're going to play Purge, maybe you want some boss monsters that don't conflict with Purge, and so I figured Nightmare Griffin might be one, assuming it doesn't get hit. And I think Avermax could be another one because, you know, you have Ozza, you have like Cross Sheep, so you have like cards in the engine that like you can summon from extra deck using the Apophis cards, so it shouldn't be too hard to link climb into this guy as like a end piece on your field. I think this is a good start to the Odion deck. It's definitely better than like Gate Guardian or Flame Swordsman. I guess Flame Swordsman is debatable because we got Flame Swordsman like right after Isolde got banned. If Isolde wasn't banned, Flame Swordsman definitely would have been the best Maze archetype so far, but this seems solid. I just hate that it loses to both Imperm and Droll. Like if Man with a Mark had an effect where instead of while you control Temple of the Kings, discarded Apophis monsters cannot be destroyed by battle by card effects, I wish it said it cannot be targeted by card effects, because I don't care too much about the battle, because I can always just get these cards back using like Last Judge and using like the feel spell. Like getting these cards back in rotation is not a big deal. Like the whole by battle part is really not that important. But if you could stop him from being targeted by card effects, then he can't be impermed. Then they're gonna have to hard open Ash or Dominus Purge to stop this guy, which would have been great. But unfortunately, that is not the case. So Imperm hurts this deck, Droll hurts this deck, and Ghost Ogre hurts the deck, which Ghost Ogre is really good right now. So you're going to see people on it. We're even on it. You're going to have to be very skillful to play with the deck properly. But yeah, I don't think the deck is bad. I just think it's going to take some time to really like see if it can stand up in this format. You know, that's kind of what the question is. Like, is it really a good choice for the format? If you have all of this sitting around, which I mean, you'd probably have to be rich, but and also considering the deck has 2 secret rares from the new set, you're probably gonna have to be a little rich. But if you have all this sitting around, it can probably be a fun deck to like take to locals and to like try out if that's something that you'd like to do. But otherwise, I would say just maybe I could come up with like a budget build if people are interested. But if not, that'll be all for now. This has been your boy Nistro here, signing out.